So welcome to the latest edition of our water coolers. So this is going to be quite a short one, and we thought we'd come on here today because we've just recorded a full podcast with Dentist to Invest with James Martin about our predictions for 2026. So that's quite a long podcast. So if you want to listen to the long form version, it will be available online. But we thought we'll cover some of the key headlines or stuff that we think will happen in 2026 on here. So number one.
Guess increased market activity, especially around NHS practices. So if we look back at our completions in 2025, as an agent, we did a lot of high grossing private practices. So what we probably had is an influx of entrepreneurial private owners that decided they didn't want to take the risk of CGT going up, of business asset disposal relief going up. And what they decided to do was that was the right time for them to sell. Conversely, if we look at the NHS practices, what you had is owners who started to find running the business slightly easier. Recruitment challenges weren't as high, and they've started to perform their NHS contracts higher, which meant that they kept their assets over that period of time. But of course, everybody has to sell at some time. And what we do predict is with interest rates going down, which is the next probably topic that we're going to discuss, but from interest rates perspective, from the buyers, these opportunities become financially more viable, become more profitable, and as such, from a seller's point of view, we predict that it's going to be the right time for them to sell, and equally a buyer, it's going to be the right time for them to buy, which could fuel the market.
Yeah. Okay, which segues nicely into number two, which is that we think that NHS practices will increase in popularity over the next year. Phil's probably partly explained part of the reason for that is that there was a couple of tinkering, if you like, to the NHS contract. Latest one released just before Christmas, which we will believe will make it easier for practice owners to achieve some of their UDAs. And in turn, what you'll see is those practices who were maybe sort of limping along at sort of 94% who maybe there was a bit of fear over the the sustainability of that NHS contract will now get within the tolerance level, and in turn what you'll see is those practices come to market thinking, oh, you got there, sell it quick. We'll see some of those this year, and in turn the independent market has always loved NHS practice, banks have always loved NHS practice, and so we will see more of those coming to market in the next 12 months.
So we also think that corporate activity will try and increase. So we do anticipate corporates, or the corporates that are currently focusing on their own estate management, will try to come back to the market. Okay, whether that is going to be as successful as what
there's a
they'd
but
hope,
for that, isn't there?
yeah, as they'd hope, we think might be a real challenge. And that isn't a challenge from, I guess, a seller's perspective, because I think sellers will be able to find a buyer for a good practice. But I think what they will struggle to be able to do is to compete with micro-consolidators and the deal structures and the value in which micro-consolidators are paying. So if we look back historically, a large proportion of corporate sales that sold to corporates were because corporates were offering higher multiples. Okay, so the benefit of selling to a corporate was that they would give you a better price than a micro-consolidator or an individual. If we look back at the recent transactions, corporates just simply aren't paying enough of an added value to win these opportunities, and as such, that may increase goodwill multiples and values, but equally it may be that these corporates have fair entrance into the market.
Yeah, and we think that will probably be more like the medium to long term as opposed to something we're going to see in the next 12 months. And even then, it's probably not going to be by a magnitude where people who have the intent to sell maybe would want to hold on for a year or so, because it may not be worth it in the grand scheme of things. And I guess probably our final prediction for this year is to do interest rates, which again you previewed, is that we think interest rates will continue to come down, but they probably won't come down as fast as was maybe hoped, for various different inflationary and geopolitical reasons, but we certainly don't think they're going to go up. And in turn, I think most people have budgeted in now that we're on a collision course with nearer to a 3% marker, albeit at a slower pace. So we don't think that would have a massive impact on the market, but if anything, it will sustain buyer confidence. Obviously, the only caveat to that is if the geopolitical situations really do kick off and we do see lots of tariffs, and in turn, then we do see interest rates go up, is that what we might see then is a knock-on effect on the market, but we think that's unlikely to happen. So just as a reminder, if you want to know more about any of these kind of 4 key points, then the full podcast is available on dentistryinvest.com. Likewise, if you want to know the state of play with the current market, you can download the interim goodwill report elsewhere on our website, which will give you an overview of everything that's happened in the first half of this fiscal year, and roughly where goodwill multiples sit, be it on geography or be it on practice composition.